Let me just introduce you all to what's happening for the next hour. I work for an organisation called Enterprise M3. Currently on the call with me are colleagues from EM3, Nicola Wilberforce from Esher Sixth Form College, and Emma from Capgemini. And we have been planning this session, for about 6 or 7 months now. I'm going to talk you through the agenda any minute now, but if at any point you have questions, Shirley, my colleague, will be monitoring the chat, and there will be a Q&A section at the end. So if it's okay, I'm going to start going now. So what we're going to do today is we're going to give you a bit of a background as to why we're running this session. We're going to give you a few pointers on how you as an organisation can maximise your recruitment process, because from the education side, we have noticed that there are some assumptions that are made by some of our colleagues within the employer world about how they'll be able to recruit apprentices. And we felt that one of the reasons for having the fair was that we were going to give you all a marketplace to promote your own experiences and opportunities going forward. But we wanted to give you a bit of a background in how you can mirror and reflect your recruitment process into that of the academic cycle, which the two need to come together. And the two can be sort of opposite worlds, if you like. So we're going to give you a bit of background, and Nicola's going to talk to you about how that process is delivered within her college and how that really reflects what's going on outside in most other schools and colleges as well. I'm going to talk about the Degree Apprenticeship Fair and how excited we are and the opportunities that's going to offer you as an employer to actually promote your opportunities. And then, as I say, at the end, there'll be questions. If anybody's got anything that they want to say, please put it into the chat and we'll come back together at the end. So just as an introduction, I'm going to be almost chairing this session. So I work as an enterprise coordinator for Enterprise M3. There'll be a map in a minute which shows you what the Enterprise M3 region is. My team, my colleagues and I are part funded by the EM3 LEP, which is the organisation that draws down money from the government to support skills and growth within the economy. And we are transitioning into something called a Careers Hub. And the Careers Hub is a way of bringing schools and colleges together to work collaboratively within a geographical cluster-based approach, so that all of our schools and colleges can start working together to have more effective resourcing and more effective funding, so we can share the funding that we have across a geographical area for mutual benefit, rather than schools trying to struggle and do things independently. But we also have certain targets that we're asked to deliver on behalf of the government, normally the DFE, which is Department for Education, to work towards improving the skills and skills agenda and any government legislation that is coming through on behalf of employers to help support the skills development across the country. One of the things that we've been asked to really target this year is apprenticeships, and I'm going to also give you a little bit of history about the Degree Apprenticeship Fair. So that's me. So I said to you I would show you what our area is. We basically do what it says on the tin. Our area covers on both sides almost the length and breadth of the M3. So we start all the way down in the south on the New Forest border, and we go all the way up into the M25 towards London LEP, which you will see around that map. The other LEP areas are indicated, and I've put a great big arrow where Esher is. And the actual fair that we're going to be promoting today is going to be based in Esher Sixth Form, but it's going to attract school students and parents within about an hour's travelling distance of the actual venue itself and the college itself. So some of the students won't be from our LEP area, but they are going to be invited. But you can see there the sort of area that we cover and the change of economy and the change of sort of employers that we cover. So down in what I would call the south, although my colleagues don't tend to call it the south, but I live in Dorset, which is slightly off this map. But down at my end of the M3, we've got much more agriculture, care, tourism, and quite a lot of our students go into the Southampton and Solent LEP area, which is down here. And then obviously at the other end, we've got the attraction of London. We've got the major financial sectors within London. And one of the things that I know Nicola is going to talk to you about is how they are struggling to get young people to recognise that there are opportunities within their own neighbourhood, rather than having to travel to actually find these opportunities in the future. But also the advantage of a degree apprenticeship is that most students can study and go wherever they like. So this is a promotional opportunity really to raise awareness to parents about the opportunities that are available to them. And I think that's probably something that Emma will talk to you about how getting that message across to parents about the opportunities that our local employers have got can be quite a struggle, but also to make sure that you as employers have got a forum where you can all actually talk to the same amount of students at the same time. Okay, so I'm going to go on to the next one. So I've given you a little bit of brief explanation about what a careers hub, but basically it is it's a mechanism to bring schools and colleges together, and apprenticeship providers and employers across England within local areas, with the expectation that that will make it easier for schools and colleges to improve how they deliver careers education to young people. And part of careers education involves explaining about the opportunities that they will have at certain points, which we call transition points, within their education. Careers hubs are organised as partnerships between the Careers and Enterprise Company, who we get some of our funding from, and the rest of our funding comes from our EM3 LEP. And we will then look to make sure that we are spending that resource in the most opportune and the most effective way, with the clusters themselves identifying what they would see as the best use of that resource. So basically, there will be within our EM3 area probably 4 or 5 different clusters located geographically, and partner organisations will be invited to attend those sessions. We will also have a steering group made up of key employers and key educational providers. And there's also another group where it is completely employers attending, who then feed back to the steering group about what they would like to see us do on their behalf. So we will work in partnership with you, and that could be by delivering a range of different requirements through things like careers fairs, work experience, and we have started to call that more experience of work, because it doesn't always have to be face-to-face. One-off projects which the clusters might identify, and we can draw funding down for them to actually do one-off projects within a very local geographical area, to support you with your recruitment and skills needs, and ensure that we've got an employer voice, and so that you are able to put your voice forward to education, but also very much like we are going to do today, that education can actually tell you how we can work together. So it becomes much more of a mutual beneficial way of working. So one of the things that we have been targeted to really highlight is a degree apprenticeships. I'm not going to go over that in a huge amount of detail, other than to say in March 22, as in this year, the degree apprenticeship policy was issued, which said that that is going to be really high target for government to increase the numbers of take up within degree apprenticeships, hence this conversation today. Right, I'm going to hand it over to Nicola now. So I am going to basically handle the slides as and when Nicola wants me to. But yeah, so I'm introducing Nicola, who is Director of Progression Guidance at Esher Sixth Form College, who have very kindly offered to work in collaboration with us to host this event that we're going to do. But before we talk about the event, we thought it would be useful for Nicola to explain how they and how she supports her students to look at apprenticeships and all the other sorts of opportunities that students can go on to at the end of the sixth form. Over to you, Nicola.
Thank you, Jan. I'll try my best Chris Whitty. Next slide, please, as we go through. Just before we go to the next slide, you can see that Esher College is quite a notable in appearance with its grey and black windows and so on, but it's really an institution of more than 2,000 sixth form students. It's pretty typical in size for a sixth form college, but it's obviously a lot bigger than a school sixth form. And as Jan said earlier, we take students from a big geographical area. About half actually live typically within the EM3 LEP area, and the majority of the rest live within the London LEP area. And the fair that we're organising in November is not just going to be for our students, it's going to be for students, in effect, any students and their parents who can get to Esher College, and so we're going to be advertising it widely and so on. But we have at the college quite a history of organising events for different year groups, and because we have such a lot of students, it certainly makes it worth our while to put effort in. And the partnership that I've had with EM3 and with Jan in particular over the last couple of years has resulted in our together deciding to put on this this degree apprenticeship fair and have this preliminary discussion with you as employers to share a little bit about what we're looking at from the educational perspective. So next slide, please. So, and the next one as well. So the things that I'm going to talk about are really the sort of general the principles, because the detail will obviously differ between school sixth forms, colleges, FE colleges, and so on. But if you can click through actually, Jan, because I was expecting that I'd be doing this. I think what's important for employers to realise is that it doesn't really matter what educational institution students are in. Between the ages of 16 and 18, the overall timescales are basically set by public examinations and by the deadlines for applying to university, the Ucas deadlines. And during that quite busy period of time that students are in the sixth form, or years 12 and 13, depending upon what it's referred to in different institutions, there's a sort of an opportunity that students have to make applications. But that application window is actually relatively short, and there's so much else that students during that period of their study have to do that I think sometimes they're not applying for degree apprenticeships, and you as employers aren't necessarily getting the best students applying for the degree apprenticeships because possibly you're perhaps going out for adverts and so on and expecting students to apply at times when actually they've got other things on their minds. So if we look at the next slide, there are some things before students go into the sixth form, whilst they're still at school in years 10 and 11, that pretty much happen across the board. There are lots of events usually put on by schools or groups of schools or consortia, sometimes in conjunction with colleges, sometimes with university input, sometimes with company input, for years 10 and 11, which are aimed at raising aspiration for these students and aimed at helping them find out about the options they've got when they leave sort of compulsory pre-16 schooling. And there are often opportunities for companies to be involved in those, although it's not often that the students will be going straight into those companies or those career areas. It's much more about awareness raising and making young people and sometimes their parents aware of what's out there. And of course, students do have to go and do something when they leave school, because they mustn't be neat, they mustn't be not in education, employment or training. They've all got to do something gainful until at least the age of 18. So it may be that you as employers have been approached to be part of those school year 10, 11 type activities. Some schools even offer them as far down as year 9. But what we're really going to think about is what happens once students decide that they're going to carry on studying at sixth form, not go into a level 2 or a level 3 apprenticeship at 16, and how you can maximise recruiting that group of students. So if we can have the next slide. Typically, what will happen in the lower 6, or some places call it 6-1, some will still use the year 12 description for the first year 6. As students start in the sixth form, a lot of it is about getting them used to being a more adult type of student. And some of those study patterns that we hope to get students to adopt will be very good work patterns as well, about being responsible for their own deadlines and being responsible for their own work and working out when they have to do the work that they're set, and making sure that they balance their other extracurricular activities with their college work, which for a lot of them, even if they stay at the sixth form of their school, where they may not necessarily have lessons every single period, is a massive change. And that whole time management element of starting off in sixth form is quite important. But towards the sort of spring term, usually in most schools and colleges, students will experience activities or tutorial sessions or assemblies, however it's delivered, where we're already starting to get them to think about what they do when they leave sixth form. And I think the first thing to notice is that it's really quite a short period of time before starting and then starting to think about what comes next. If we have the next slide. What also is introduced often to students at this time are various kind of what are grouped together and referred to as destinations platforms. And there are a number of these. Some of them are free, most of them are paid for. Some of them are quite widespread, some of them are quite niche, but they're ways that students can find out about job areas, things that they can go on to study, areas of employment that they could aim towards, and what's needed. Now, we at Esher actually use a destinations platform called Unifrog, but there are lots of others. Some of them focus more on work-based destinations. Some of them focus more on university-based destinations. We chose to go with Unifrog, which is a paid-for destinations platform, but it's a social enterprise. It's effectively a not-for-profit organisation because it included both. It didn't do a kind of sheep and goats university or apprenticeship. It did both together. And quite a lot of schools and colleges use that, but there are others. And these destination platforms work alongside some of the more traditional methods of engaging students, things like higher education fairs and employer fairs. Sometimes those are organised by Ucas, which is the charity that manages the applications to university. Sometimes they're organised by individual schools, colleges, or groups of those. And sometimes they're separate. There's an employer fair and then there's a Ucas fair. Sometimes they're all lumped together. But one of the key things is, again, that parents are involved. And sometimes there are special talks for parents. Sometimes there's a parallel program for parents. Sometimes it's something that parents and their young people are expected to come to together. And different schools and colleges, depending upon their size and location and expertise, will use different methods, but those are pretty typical. We could have the next slide. Yeah, but the one thing particularly with higher education is that often these fairs, which are in sort of February, March time onwards in the first year, are the very first contact that a university might have with a student. And I think this is something which some employers need to start taking on board. Universities have had to work quite hard to build relationships and have multiple contact points with their prospective applicants and then their applicants and then their prospective offer holders over time. And this kind of ongoing relationship, which happens through these destination platforms, through the fairs, through the talks, and so on, is something that I think some employers could learn a thing or two from. If we can have the next one. So in the summer of the first year, this is when students really start to get going on what they really are thinking of doing when they leave sixth form. And there are lots of university open days, which are often the second or third contact that the universities have had with students. They put on lots of what are known as widening participation events. This acronym WP stands for widening participation. And those are often events that target particular groups of students from perhaps from BAME backgrounds or from what we call first in family, or from students who've been on pupil premium or bursary, if free school meals effectively, or students who are living in areas where there's a very low uptake of students going on to higher education. And lots of universities are putting these events on, often all expenses paid, day visits, overnight visits, opportunities for students who might not necessarily be the typical student who wants to go to university to experience what it's like. And obviously what the university hopes is that those students will then apply to them, or at least apply to university as a whole. And then students are often quite keen to make sure that they're really genned up about what they want to study. So they might sign up for a massive online open course, which is what a MOOC stands for. Some of these are actually put on by employers, but they are mostly put on by higher education institutions, but certainly on Unifrog and on other places, FutureLearn and so on. There are opportunities for students to find out, to have access to extra and super curricular learning and to work independently through these online activities, which will help them to understand perhaps what a particular subject at university might be like, or how it might lead into a particular career area. Most schools and colleges will have some form of summer exams for the first years, and this is quite important because this often gives the students an idea of what their likely grades are going to be. Often their Ucas grades are based on these, but obviously they take them quite seriously and they have to balance during the summer doing all these exciting open days and things, but also doing some good hard revision of what they've learned in their first years. And then they've got some pretty good ideas about what they might be wanting to do. And at the end of year 12, they're starting to complete their Ucas form and start writing their personal statement, and are very excited about going on to the future. For those who very definitely don't want to go on to university and think they want to apply for apprenticeships, it's quite hard at this point to keep them engaged because no employers at this stage are advertising for this group of students yet. So sometimes these year 12s seem a little bit divorced because they see their friends applying for university, which admittedly isn't going to happen for another year, and they want to apply for apprenticeships, but there are no apprenticeships that are working to that sort of time scale. If we look at the next slide, you can see what starts to happen in the autumn term of year 13 or the upper sixth. Students will complete their Ucas applications. Schools and colleges always have much earlier deadlines than the actual Ucas deadline itself, which isn't now until the end of January, because there's quite a bit there's quite a bit that schools and colleges have to do to write references and check forms and so on. And particularly if you've got over 800 students applying to university, which is what we have, that's an awful lot of administration. And so we have quite early deadlines. What happens once students submit their forms is that there are some subjects for which they have to take additional tests. Sometimes they have to go for selection interviews. Sometimes they will go on applicant days and so on. But they will start receiving offers, often within weeks of submitting their form. So students are already receiving offers from universities for what they might be doing effectively in a year's hence. Next slide, please. And it's quite a good idea to get all of this out of the way in the autumn term, because pretty much after Christmas, in most schools and colleges, sometimes before, there are some form of mock exams, coursework deadlines, which are set by the examining boards, start looming, and pieces of non-exam assessment work, projects, extended project reports, all have to be submitted. And again, once there are usually earlier deadlines in schools and colleges, the deadlines themselves are set by the examining boards. So all of that starts to kick in the spring. And students start attending revision sessions and doing lots of preparation for the sort of the run into the end of their time at sixth form. And then they're also making their final decisions on their firm and insurance choices for university if they've applied to university, and are applying for student finance, which starts to make it all seem a bit more real, applying to the student loans company and so on for their fees and so on to be paid. And the time gets quicker and quicker. And having worked in sixth form for so long, every single year without fail, students look horrified when they realise they've only got so many weeks to go before they're actually going to be leaving to take their exams and leaving the sixth form altogether. So it gets faster and faster and faster, and they're really focusing on the courses that they're studying. And it's really quite hard for them at this point to factor in applications for apprenticeships, which for many companies, it's really good to see your comment. Quite a lot of apprenticeship opportunities don't get advertised until after the Christmas in effect in year 13, and it's just really hard for students to do it, particularly if they're students who might be putting in 2 applications at the same time. So if we go to the next slide, this is the problem. Sometimes apprenticeships applications just don't fit in. And I think it's particularly the case for students who are applying for both university and apprenticeships and truly haven't quite decided which route they want to go down. And this might be applying for university and applying for higher and degree level apprenticeships, but some of them are also applying for level 3 apprenticeships and effectively looking at kind of going sideways. They're starting to get all this positive stuff back from the universities. They've sort of got somewhere they could go. They've got some firm offers from universities. And then when we try with supporting students through our apprenticeship team and our career development classes and so on, into, oh look, there's some really good apprenticeships that have now been advertised with this company or this organization, they kind of go, oh well, I've got an offer from so and so to go and study such and such, I think I'll take that. And of course, one of the big problems is that when students apply to university, they can effectively make 5 applications in one hit with their Ucas form. And each company or organization is pretty much wanting a separate form. Sometimes you'll use the government website, which autofills a lot of the basic stuff for them. And when students are juggling coursework deadlines and being hassled by their subject teachers for handing work in and finishing the specifications and so on, they often almost can't cope with the prospect of also doing another apprenticeship application. And what students often at this point do say to us is, I'm going to wait and apply for apprenticeships after I finish my exams. And of course, then once again, they're completely out of kilter again, because if companies are going on an annual basis, they've got to wait almost another year once again. So perhaps if we can click through to the next slide. My feeling is that some organisations are possibly advertising a bit too late in the academic year to get the best students. I mean, it may be that you've got far more applicants than you want, but I think that the best application window for most employers to start certainly alerting their youngsters to is in this autumn of the upper sixth. That's the sort of when students are in application mode, when the curriculum in the sixth form has not exactly a lull, but it's where they're just basically getting stuck into their second year course, their second year studies, and they don't have deadlines or coursework deadlines and so on. And I think what it also does, if you start it at this point, is gives the parents quite a lot more opportunity to get on board, because the students, I've found, really don't recognize brands in the same way as their parents do. And often it's the parents who see an opportunity and recognise that the organisation is offering a really good quality apprenticeship, and it's the parents who get their youngsters to come along. And again, the parents themselves, as parents of sixth formers in the spring and summer of the second year, are very much concerned about the youngsters focusing on their revision and getting their EPQs finished. And the parents have sort of got their heads in a better space if those relationships start to be built a bit earlier. And that's what we're hoping to do with the Degree Apprenticeship Fair. Now, I think that's mine. There was one thing I was going to share with you, which is we did a part-time jobs fair last week at Esher, and although it's very simple and it's something which is a completely different scale for approaching youngsters for employment, we're very close to the racecourses Sandown, Kempton, and Epsom here, and the Jockey Club recruit a lot of our youngsters to do work in hospitality and catering. And what they had at our employer fair was just a simple QR code on a key ring, and they were dishing these out to the youngsters, and all the youngsters had to do was scan the QR code to go to their pretty simple application form. But something like these little key rings, notepads, and so on, universities start dishing out at the earliest opportunity as one of the very first ways that they start to engage the youngsters. And again, I think some companies could, rather than just putting out, right, we've got some degree apprenticeships on offer, and expecting students to come, could do a little bit of that kind of almost like slowly catch your monkey with the youngsters with things like this, to start building awareness on the kids with the young people about their brand, their company, and what their training offers are going to be. So we're hoping that those of you who might come to the Degree Apprenticeship Fair are going to have some good ways to interact with young people as well as with their parents, and perhaps you might think about whether or not you're putting your adverts out at the right time to get the best students to apply for your apprenticeships. That's my bit.
Thanks, Nicola. I'm sure there'll be some questions afterwards. I'd just like to introduce now Emma Salomon, who I met as one of our enterprise advisors, who works for Capgemini, and therein started an amazing relationship between Capgemini and Salesian School, where she's the enterprise advisor. So when we were talking initially about the sorts of relationships that employers can build up to support both the careers education within the school, but also their own recruitment and their own relationship with schools that are local to them, Emma is one of the best examples that I could think of. And she's actually going to hopefully present at the Degree Apprenticeship Show. So what I've done is I've asked Emma if she would come along and explain about their degree apprenticeships and the support that they have had from being in a very close relationship with Salesian, and also the relationship that she's had with us. So over to you, Emma.
Thank you, Jan. Thanks for that introduction, and hi to everybody. Thanks to Nicola for the overview and insights, and I do recognise a lot of what you've shared, particularly about the planning and timing of applications, etc. Just by way of further introduction, and I hope you can all hear me well. The Capgemini, for those that are less familiar, we're a global IT digital consulting and services organisation, some 350,000 employees globally, 5,000 in the UK. And we have a very advanced and proactive early years career team based in the UK, who partner with government, industry, schools, education, schools, colleges, etc., to promote early years in STEM, and particularly obviously in our organisation. As Jan says, I've been an enterprise advisor through Capgemini for about 18 months, and have partnered with Salesian School in Chertsey. And I must say, I think, not to be modest, but just to be honest, the partnership is very much, in my experience, very much driven by how proactive the careers leader is at Salesian, and how passionate she is about providing the very best of opportunities, including apprenticeship. So if I can move to the next slide, just Jan wanted me to share very briefly a little bit of an overview about our own apprenticeship story at Capgemini, but also as well how we work with Salesian in terms of promoting apprenticeships generally, not specifically to Capgemini, but generally as another potential career choice for youngsters. So the first thing to say is we have actually 29 apprenticeships across Capgemini UK, various different programmes incorporating advanced apprenticeships for those after GCSE, higher apprenticeships and degree. Degree apprenticeships form the largest cohort, and as you can see, we have 4 quite different models, partnering with 3 universities and offering almost 300 or so apprentices every year. Going back to something that I heard Nicola mention, we have 4 I suppose application points throughout the year, literally I guess crossing over the normal academic year cycle. So 2 in the spring and summer and 2 in the autumn, and that allows us to obviously give the broadest opportunity to as many potential apprentices as possible, in addition allowing those youngsters to be able to make choices depending on the various options that they've been considering throughout year 13. And I'll come on and talk a little bit more about my partnership with Salesian, but again, just reflecting on Nicola's comments, it's very true. I find with the work that I'm doing with Salesian that we are starting earlier and earlier in the sort of 6th form cycle to introduce apprenticeships and the thought process as an option. Starting in year 12 with some overview of life as an apprentice, particularly in the work experience timeframes. We've brought in apprentices just to give a flavour of what they could consider if they chose to apply following work experience. But anyway, the point is we have a very robust and quite mature now apprenticeship programme within Capgemini, and that those 4 programmes, if we move to the next slide please, all offer broadly the same pattern. So we have on-campus experience. As they progress through the apprenticeship programme, they have regular and prescribed pay and progression. They have a recognised degree at the end and various assessments throughout, and they are very much treated as a kind of university cohort, albeit within the employer. So they come together as a cohort frequently. They bond, and they have team building activities as part of the programme from a Capgemini perspective, and we find that not only strengthens their experience, because sometimes, of course, one of the downsides perceived by having a degree apprenticeship is that you miss out on the university life and the university experience. So we, as much as possible, we create that bonding and that team spirit and that connection through the working environment, including the celebration of graduation. And we find that not only helps in terms of retaining them throughout the programme itself, but also actually our retention rates post completion of the apprenticeship are also very high, and a number of apprentices have stayed beyond for 3, 4, 5 years. Next slide, please. So in terms of how Capgemini partners with EM3 and local schools, the connection for me, I mean, and the primary responsibility as an enterprise advisor is for me to bring business insights, business connections, and thought leadership into the curriculum. So partnering with Salesian in particular, you know, we've offered up opportunities to supplement the curriculum, particularly around business and economics, with kind of real world examples, bringing colleagues in to talk on a range of topics, including sustainability, CSR, Brexit, etc., all depending on the curriculum and topic within the school. Supporting alongside Jan and the M3 team the progression through the Gatsby benchmarks, and ensuring that where we can, and as an employer, we're providing the school with challenge and also resource on that. Supporting the students with workshops and applications and interviews. I mentioned earlier that Salesian in particular is starting to introduce the concept of apprenticeships earlier and earlier, and in fact we're running in conjunction with the school a couple of workshops called the A to Z of apprenticeship applications, and that's really a walkthrough not only of our process but more broadly what students can expect in terms of applying for apprenticeship, how to prepare, and also what thoughts they should have in terms of where their interests lie and what they want to achieve if they go down the apprenticeship route. Linked to that is some first-hand experience and bringing in apprentices, former and current, to talk through their experience. And promotion of our degree apprenticeships, of course, through situations like this and the fair that Isha are putting on, but also extending our apprenticeship model through the EM3 network and extending out to parents through the school as well. So that's just some of the ways in which directly we're working together. I think that's it for me, Jan, for the moment.
Yes, it is. So I think there is only, can I just check? I think there's just one slide left. Yes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back and stop sharing. And what I'm going to do is just give a brief rundown about going forward, what we anticipate that the next stage will be and how we are thinking that the degree fair is going to take place. So it's happening on the 17th of November, and we anticipate it will be a fair approach, so that there will be a hall with stalls around it, which you will obviously have a position, and then there's going to be breakout rooms, which roughly every 20 to 25 minutes, an employer is going to be able to have a slot within that breakout room, at which point you can do what you like. So if you want to have apprentices talking, if you want to show a slide, if you want to show a film, if you want to do whatever it is that you want to do in that space to promote your own individual programme with parents and students that are going to be attending, that is entirely up to you. And I know from speaking to some of the employers that are here today, you're going to be using that almost as an introduction, so that you can then have your own open days, maybe after Christmas. So that this is very much of a fair, so that you can open up your opportunities to promote how you are going to then recruit going forward. So after today, expect some registration forms to be coming out probably in the next week to 10 days. And then we will then be putting out flyers to all of the local schools on that map within a radius of Isha sixth form. And the schools won't be coming in mass what we're hoping is that individual parents and their children will come along as individuals, because they have seen that the employers that are going to be attending, and they're going to recruit themselves onto it. So don't expect an entire sixth form to arrive. What you will have is the young people who are specifically interested in degree apprenticeships. And as I say, we felt it was a much more effective way for us to support all of you, rather than what's happened in the past, where we have maybe put on 2 or 3 bespoke events in collaboration with you, and sort of negating everybody else that might want to attend. And also, we want it to become a fixed point within the curriculum, so that all of the issues that Nicola talked about making sure that your offer isn't equitable to the sorts of things that Ucas and the universities are able to do, you aren't getting lost in the ether. So this is going to become part of the timetable that all of our local schools and colleges know we're going to be putting on. And then hopefully it will become something that you can start that process with. If you are interested in some of the things that Emma was saying about the sorts of involvement that she's had as an enterprise advisor, that is slightly different. And yes, that's a conversation to have, and we would be really welcome to have those conversations with you. But it was more to show you the advantage that Emma and Capgemini have had from having that relationship, rather than actually promoting enterprise advisors as it was today. But as I say, if that's something that you're interested in, then please email me and we can have that as a separate conversation. Right, we have 10 minutes left. Is there anybody around the room that would like to ask a question? Because as I say, there are a lot of people in the room with a lot of different experiences, and it would be wonderful to hear your own thoughts on what we're proposing to do, and if there's anything that you would like extra at the event that we haven't thought about. Either unmute yourself or put something in the chat, or if you don't have any questions, then obviously in the next week or 10 days you'll get some form of registration document coming out from us. Any feedback at all?
Karen, I don't know whether Travis Cooper wanted to share their recruitment process.
Yeah, sorry, I am here. I'm just not that well, so I'm going to keep my camera off. Yeah, it's interesting to hear what you said about the cycle, because we've actually opened in September and they start the following September. But the ones that are applying now don't seem to be the ones that are in year 13. It seems to be the ones that didn't get jobs before. So that is the current issue that we're facing at the moment.
I think that wouldn't surprise me at the moment, because I think in a way that's almost, this is really quite early. I think sort of the optimum is sort of just what I call just after October half term. It's sort of most schools and colleges will have an internal deadline for Ucas. The youngsters have got their Ucas application out of the way. Now they're going to have a look at apprenticeships. And they half of the students who make an account on Ucas have ticked the box to say they're interested in degree apprenticeships as well. But they can't do both at the same time. So I think it's very definitely the straightforward Ucas application, get that out the way. Most colleges have got a deadline and schools before half term, and then sort of November time, it's like, and I want to look at apprenticeships now too. So you might find that it's almost a little bit too early for the year 13s now. But I can understand why they might well be in effect what we'd call year 14s or 6-3, those who've just left school or college, haven't got themselves sorted out with anything and are now looking.
I have to admit that when it came to inviting some of you round the table, what I actually did was look at the National Apprenticeship website to find out who in the local area were actually advertising apprenticeships. And some of the deadlines were very interesting. Some of them were next week, some of them were next September. So it seems that there is a definite issue going around here about timings and when it might be appropriate, and what you as the employers are actually looking for. So are you looking for students who are currently at school and marketing it that way? Or are you looking at students who might not have decided to go to university and you're looking for those instead? So I think when we're looking forward as a group of people around a table, I think that's an interesting discussion to have, because I think part of it is you don't necessarily know what you want, and the students don't necessarily know that what you want is on offer. So yeah, I'm hoping that after the fair, that quite a lot of this discussion can be ongoing. I don't know if there's anybody that would like to come back at me at that, because I'm quite happy to, you know, be challenged on that. Or is that something that you are all experiencing? Because degree apprenticeships are definitely going to be the way of the world and really exciting opportunities. But I think it is, I mean, I'm going to go back again. I have been at so many fairs where I have had young people come up to me and say, I've just been over to speak to them over there, and it cannot be that what I've just heard has got to be too good to be true. How the heck am I going to get all of this as a package? And you go, actually, it isn't too good to be true. And they're going, well, why haven't I heard about it? So, you know, I think it is early days still, as sad as that might seem. But I do think that there is something, a bringing together that needs to happen, so to make sure that you're not missing out, the students aren't missing out, and we and in EM3 and the sort of CEC can do everything that we can to bring both parties together.
Hi, Jan. Sorry for joining late. It's Charlotte and Emma from P&G here.
Hi.
I won't ask any questions because I think you've probably covered it in the first half an hour of the session, which we unfortunately had to miss. But one piece of kind of learning that we've had as we go into our third year of recruitment is where we've got partner schools, which we have a couple in London and one based in Surrey. Part of our recruitment process is doing online tests. And unfortunately, there is nothing we can do if a candidate doesn't pass those tests, even if they're amazing, to keep them going through the process. And what we found is actually, particularly students, if this is their first job that they're applying for, kind of do the tests on their phone or do them on rubbish Wi-Fi or that kind of thing. And so one of our biggest learnings for this year is actually with those partner schools is they've kind of set a date in their school where they're going to block out a classroom for silent. You can come and do your P&G online tests in this classroom on this date with perfect Wi-Fi connection and full concentration, which we're really hoping is going to help, because we had brilliant students that didn't pass because of purely logistical reasons last year. So that would be one big learning that I'd share. And then the second one is we've opened our applications, and I would echo exactly the same thing. We've had like kind of dribs and drabs, but nothing like major coming through at the moment. But we definitely see a pickup in October half term where people go, oh, actually, I've kind of done all the tick boxing I was meant to do for school, but there's still something more I'm looking for. And we've intentionally set our deadline to be the first week of March. So it's post-February half term. And then also in a memorable way, we can say to students, you have a month after Ucas closes to then apply for our apprenticeship programme. So then hopefully it still works in terms of timing to give them offers, and we have enough buffer room at the other end, but it means applications are open kind of long enough and in a meaningful way for the students.
I think that's been really valuable, Charlotte. And I think when it comes to what we can do for you is we can actually put that request out to schools and colleges. And maybe if you were to look at the recruitment where you've had young people coming from before, then schools absolutely love to know where their students have gone on to. And if they can build up an alumni with you, then that gives you the movement into the door to say, actually, we've now learnt this, what can we do better? And we can actually open those doors for you to actually get those messages out. So to share the idea of an IT, you know, free day for testing would be amazing. And maybe you could look at giving us some example about what the tests look like, so it's not such a shock and awe day when they actually do the tests for the first time.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think our biggest learning has been for us, I mean, they're designed in America at a global level. They are just so not applicable to a 17-year-old applying for a new program at P&G, but it's something that we've been battling but haven't seemed to have won just yet. But it's like, how do we try and make it as successful as possible for students applying?
But I think it's very easy to say, you know, it's not an easy process, but that is part of what we're trying to do when we come to experience of work, you know.
Yeah,
so
totally.
exactly, so if that is what students have to do to get through as an experience of work to work with P&G, then that actually answers a load of the benchmarking that the schools have to do for their Gatsby benchmarks. So it's
Yeah.
a win-win. So again, it's how can we build the relationship between you and your feeder schools to help that you get the best out of the students that you possibly can. I think as a result of the fair, I think these sorts of conversations are going to be amazing, because I think what we'll be doing is just going around and saying, how can we work with you? What can we do to build up these? And obviously, one of the reasons that we chose November was for all of the reasons that Nicola said right at the beginning. I don't want to hijack this. Is there anybody else that wants to say anything? Because looking at my clock, we've only got a minute. And I'm very conscious that, you know, we want to use your time because it's very, very valuable. Anybody else want to say anything at all? No? Well, thank you all, especially Nicola and Emma, for your amazing contributions. We will be in contact with you very soon with how to register. And if you want if you've got any advice at all about what else we can do to make the event as good as possible, then please let us know. It will be from 2:30 to 8:30, so it's going to be a very long day. But Nicola has confirmed to me that the refreshments that she puts on are amazing. So we look forward to seeing you all. I will send you a copy of this recording out. And if any of you know of any other employers who are equally struggling with degree apprenticeships that you would like to get involved at the fair, please put them forward, and then we can send this link out and send them the registration forms as well. Thank you, everybody, for your help, and I look forward to being in touch very soon.